Coming up this week on the Markcast. Well, here we go. It is finally happening.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
Courtesy of Rod Woodson's appearance on the Pat McAfee Show, we know that XFL team names are coming next week. Thank all that is holy, we are finally here. But in the meantime, we are discussing the XFL's partnership with the NFL Alumni Academy. We are doing a deep dive with the professor, as I'm calling him, Andrew Murray, talking about how players can get that golden ticket back to the NFL. And of course, we talk about the team name announcements next week as well.
It's going to be like an all-day event, kind of. So they're going to go from like morning presentation to everyone, drop the news online, and then later in the evening go to like the dinner and the coronation. That's how I see it playing out.
Then lots of CFL content on the show this week. Longtime friend of the show, really bombastic appearance from Jason Gregor. Really appreciate having him on to talk CFL Week 16.
The word brawl gets thrown out a little too easy, especially in baseball. Let's just be honest here. How many times there's a brawl, and they come out of their dugouts and two guys are pushing each other. That's not a brawl. But I'd heard the word brawl being used outside the stadium. I haven't seen any footage of it. Haven't heard anything. So was it just a lot of bravado and pushing and swearing and stuff? Either way, that's not great.
And then a couple of player interviews, courtesy of our friends over at the BC Lions and the Montreal Alouettes. We have Andrew Peirson and Mike Moore.
It was my time to step up, and I was preparing to start, for the last 2 weeks. So going into this game, it was just my opportunity to finally step up and show what I've been working for.
I've been here for probably about 6 years now. But definitely an experience. Got to enjoy a lot of things out here. Had my kids out here who are officially Canadian too. So I like being out here.
Next week is it, guys. Get ready. Gonna have lots of content coming your way. Make sure you're subscribed. Hey guys, welcome to the Markcast. Reed here. Exciting week, exciting times. Approaching the end of September here, getting ready. XFL draft coming up in November. We have our big Grey Cup trip planned, and now we know. Hopefully without a shadow of a doubt, but I think it's fairly confident to say XFL team names are coming out next week. We have events happening in Vegas, potentially St. Louis, ahead of being announced, kind of partially announced, hint to that, ahead of the team name announcements coming next week. I'm guessing Wednesday for that. That is what my gut tells me. Wednesday, September 28th, we will get those. Waiting on times, locations. Do we get a YouTube video coming out like we did last time? Press release, something in between. I don't know, but we are finally here. I really appreciate it. I know fans have been anxiously awaiting all of that news here for months and years now, it seems. And so I think next week we'll be able to really do a deep dive into all of that. Should have some good content planned. Next week, look for a live stream. For me, if the event is on Wednesday, I have the day off, and so I will be going wall-to-wall coverage that day if that is what's going on, so I really appreciate it. In the meantime, still a really exciting show this week. I was trying to figure out kind of, what are we talking about? We had the coach breakdowns last week with Greg Parks. This week, I wanted to have Andrew Murray on. Andrew is doing a deep dive with friend of the show, Max, listener Max, about the Zoom call that came out last week. The YouTube call kind of got lost in the weeds with the coaching staff reveals from the XFL. Andrew's putting together a great article for that over at News Hub. And so I really appreciate Andrew coming on, talking about, I just think it gets lost. Like, we know that the XFL, right, we're working with the NFL, we're working with the Alumni Academy, but what does that mean? How is that different than what the USFL is doing? How does that work with the XFL's timeline? With the USFL's timeline, players getting into the NFL, all of that stuff. I kind of had the Willy Wonka golden ticket. Thought that was kind of funny. Could have gone with the Steve Carell, it's happening meme off the top as well, but kind of tried to incorporate it in both of those. I thought that was funny. Really appreciate that. Andrew and I do a deep dive. Finally, team name speculation. I haven't done a lot of team name speculation in my time on the podcast since early on, just because obviously we could do that ad nauseum for weeks and weeks, but here we are a week before, finally. And so leave some comments on the YouTube video. What do you think? What team names do you think are returning? How many of the 8 do we get, do we get all new teams, partially new teams? What do you think? Make sure you comment, help build that YouTube algorithm. Really appreciate all of that. But should be exciting this week and then especially next week as well. Lots of CFL content on the show as well this week. Jason Gregor, as always, really appreciate Jason's time getting ready. He's like involved in the NHL and covering the NFL and the CFL. Really appreciate Jason coming on the show. We're talking, the Garrett Marino getting signed with the USFL, which was news that came out. It seems like a long time ago. I think that was Sunday. Kind of talking, the big BC brawl, brouhaha with Calgary. Talking about Vernon Adams. Talking about Jason's got lots of thoughts. Jason's always a great guest to kind of hit all the different CFL points. We talk Edmonton. We talk, Hamilton beating Winnipeg last week and that big upset. Lots of stuff there, so I really appreciate Jason's time. And then I really appreciate Matt Baker and Francis with the Alouettes, Matt Baker with the BC Lions, sending over a couple player interviews. Mike Moore was supposed to come on last week with the Alouettes with the bye week and schedules and stuff. That got all screwed around, so happy to have Mike Moore on this week from the Alouettes. And then Andrew Peirson, who is on the show, kind of previewing all the BC Lions big changes before the season. I think we had him on back in March. Interesting to talk with Andrew now. Think of the whirlwind that all those guys on the BC Lions have been through here. Everyone doubts us, preseason. Okay, Nathan Rourke, what are you guys going to do? Nathan Rourke sets the world on fire. We're 10-1 or whatever, and then Nathan Rourke gets hurt. Now at 9-3. So really appreciate that. Andrew coming on, kind of doing the mid-season check-in with BC Lions, and then Mike Moore talking Alouettes. That should do it for me today. Like I said, like and subscribe. Look for the content next week. Really excited. Hopefully, the XFL kind of does an announcement ahead of time. So we can kind of plan some content for you guys, but regardless, I'll be around. I'll be working from home, editing and trying to figure out some good content for you guys with all the team names. Make sure you drop your name ideas. What do we think's coming back? What do you want the Orlando team, the Vegas team, and the San Antonio team? What do we want them to be? But should be exciting. We're finally here, hitting the stretch. Once we get team names, uniforms, draft, training camps, we're here. So I'm feeling good here at the end of September. I think we weathered the storm. Still waiting. I have a couple big guests I'm hoping to get, but I feel like we've a little bit weathered this storm, a little bit of a dry spell. I thought we've kept listenership up pretty good, so I appreciate all of that. Like and subscribe. I'll check in at the end of the show. Thanks so much. Well, I think my nickname, for this next guest here, I think I'm going to start calling you the Professor, Andrew Murray. I think that's a good, internet, nickname kind of coming on. We're going to get schooled today on the Alumni Academy in a little bit. But first, exciting news here talking team names. Andrew Murray, how are you doing?
Good. I thought that was because of my perpetual glasses wearing self. I thought that's where you were getting it from.
Well, it's good. So Andrew's done a deep dive here. We're talking, the theme this week is, I think I called it XFL plus NFL Alumni Academy equals NFL Golden Ticket. We have Charlie Bunker, whatever, from, what's his last name from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory with his Golden Ticket?
No, I think that is his last name, Charlie Bunker.
There you go. But first, we have so exciting news coming out, courtesy of Rod Woodson, coach of the Las Vegas franchise, on the Pat McAfee show. Pat McAfee had a really heavy alt football day yesterday. He had Todd Haley on with the USFL. Now, Pat, quit stealing our guest, Pat. But we had Rod Woodson on talking. You were in the chat. We were all kind of in the chat when all this came down. Rod said Pat was asking Rod, hey, tell us, what's your team? And Rod's like, well, I'm coaching the Las Vegas franchise. Because he really, we don't want to have any spoilers, but he did leak, and it seemed like the league was okay with it because Anthony Becht retweeted it, that Rod said names are coming out next week. What did you make of the timing and this announcement?
Yeah, his hesitation was very similar to when Coach Anthony Becht couldn't really tell you guys at the Arizona workouts about the city names, but he really wanted to. He was just on the tip of his tongue of wanting to say St. Louis. So obviously all these guys are very gregarious and they all want to really want to say something about all this, but they just can't. And so I think for him, it shows me the enthusiasm that he has about the product. And look, wherever it's going to be done, it's going to be done. If it's going to be Pat McAfee's show, if it's going to be on your show, if it's going to be on, I don't know, some radio program in Fairbanks, Alaska. I don't know, but like they're going to do it some way, shape, or form. So it's just interesting the kind of like different angles they've had. And Pat McAfee's not the worst one because he's had these alt football conversations, people talking about them. He's at least mentioned it in the sphere of relevance, and not all sports programming on the national level obviously has done that. We've seen that time and time again. So for him to do it, I think to have someone like Rod on was actually great. I think that was a perfect opportunity to do it.
Well, and that's the whole thing, because immediately I'm like, okay, was Rod supposed to talk about this? Because we had the full XFL roster details come out last week. I think a lot of people time-wise expected that to be the team names, and then for whatever reasons maybe happened behind the scenes with personnel at XFL. Okay, we've decided now we're gonna get the full coaching staffs out there, right? Let's list all the coordinators, all that stuff. Now we're gonna do this, but I did think like, oh, was he supposed to talk about this? Because we had the Larry Dean or whatever on what was that spoiled the cities and all that. So I did kind of worry about that, but then I saw Beck retweeted it and stuff, and I thought, well, Rob Woodson still listed on the XFL personnel page, so I guess he's okay having said this so far.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think they wanted to have another super small podcast leak like they did last time, which was just kind of just so under the radar. How long was that podcast up, by the way? Was that about like 2 or 3 weeks before it got discovered?
That was wild. Yeah, it was in July, right? When the spoiled cities came out. I think it had about 6 views on it. I think it had been up for literally 2 or 3 weeks. Max discovered it, and the next thing you know, it down immediately. No, this is good. I think Pat's a good forum. I don't know. I think Pat would be a great platform next week to have the team names come out on if you wanted to do it that way. I like them leaning into not just doing ESPN stuff. That's been my criticisms with the USFL all along, is we just exist on FS1. If you don't have FS1, you don't know what this is. I like this. I mean, I think Pat, he had 50,000 whatever live viewers on the stream. I mean, it's a great platform that way. And like you said, it fits more into that alt space. Pat has worked and carved his way to advocate himself as kind of part of the sports media that I think is important to not exist in just kind of the major platforms that are out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's really been his biggest calling card, right? Not being on a major network, not being on ESPN, not being on FS1, not being on cable television. He's been able to do it by himself and do it on a platform like YouTube, for example. So, I think that might be where they could go with these announcements next week, right? They might just stick to like an online platform. And then there was the information about the coaches having potential dinner reservations next Wednesday and being able to announce all of those the next week. So maybe they do the announcement earlier in the day online, and then there's sort of a more official announcement or sort of a coronation for it later in the day in individual cities with the individual coaches as part of like kind of a fan experience, or at least an inclusive fan experience, which I imagine some people in our group and people that we know are probably already trying to make reservations for if they can find out. So have you heard anything about Seattle's end of it at all?
Well, I was just going to mention that. So courtesy, and I tweeted this last night, courtesy David Padovez, Padovese, he shared in, and it was sent over to me that he was part of the Huddle. That's the new XFL. They're online, fill out our surveys and stuff. It's not, we got to get clicking. I mean, I don't think that's the most impressive portal I've seen, but so the XFL would like to thank you for being one of the initial members of our team fan communities, the Huddle. As a thank you, we'd like to invite you and a guest to happy hour with Coach Woodson on Wednesday, September 28th at 5 p.m. near the Strip, in Vegas. Venue TBD. So, it makes me think like we're kind of figuring this out right now. If you are able to attend, please respond to this email in the next 24 hours so we can provide you with more details. XFL team. So like you said, so that's coming out Wednesday. We're kind of operating that Wednesday is going to be the XFL announcement days in general, just because, Monday is coming off the weekend and you have Monday Night Football and stuff Tuesday, and then Thursday we're getting ready. Wednesday is a good spot. Like you said, Coach Beck tweeted out, where should I make a reservation? Like, I want to go hang out. But no, I haven't. Have not heard anything from Hazlitt. Have not heard anything from, the Bob Stoops of the world. But Beck is a little bit more active. I would see him being a little more proactive in that. Jim Hazlitt has been very quiet with everything in Seattle. I think scheduling prevented him from being at the Arizona showcase, but not all the coaches are equal in terms of like, hey, I'm going to actually use social media here.
I've noticed that too. Yeah. I mean, obviously backed Woodson, Wade Phillips. He's been pretty active on Twitter as well. He's really been out there. He's always been like that, but he really likes to be engaged with fans. Obviously I think in a perfect world, we'd like to see that involvement from all 8 of them and just see that on constant repeat, but also they all be different kinds of lives, different styles of how they approach social media in terms of fan engagement and what ways they sort of keep themselves symbiotic with the league. So, yes, I think I would like all of them to be involved in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen. I'm not sure if it's something that's like a mandate from the league, for example, if they're going to say, hey, you have to do this much social engagement for this period of time. I don't think that's necessarily how it's going to work. But I mean, look, that's the whole stance of the league, right? It's fan engagement. It's keeping fans involved. It's keeping them in the loop. So I think for certain franchises that might be easier than others. It's a matter of getting people like the Arlington franchise involved with Bob Stoops, as you mentioned, getting people involved in Vegas with Woodson, which he seems like he's doing. Jim Haslett with Seattle. Is he going to be more proactive when the season gets closer? I don't know. But so far, we kind of have front runners as far as who people are that really want to be able to get that message out.
Well, it's interesting. So when I worked at my last news station before I quit to kind of do, my weddings and stuff, that was kind of right when the advent of Twitter really started, right? Because we were out doing news and, I was a videographer and we're out and it was a corporate mandate. They said, we're giving you guys these accounts. You have to use them. You have to tweet, X number of times. Like, maybe we have to do that with some of these XFL coaches. They said, like, this is part of your job description. We need you to utilize this. We need you to send in stuff. Because, we're all sitting there, and I wasn't, I think I was 25, 26. But, you had guys that were 40, 45 who've been at the station a long time, and they're like, I'm not dealing with this. Like, this is not of interest to me. But obviously, paramount to building that fan engagement, or, in the case of news, getting that, like, instant, hey, we're tweeting the car accident or whatever the heck was going on. But maybe you have to do that with some of these coaches, because some have been really good. And, I mean, Rob Woodson, I thought, came across really likable on the Pat McAfee show. I thought that was a good spot for him. So getting more of that, too, just the non-sterile stuff that we're seeing a lot with the USFL. I like seeing a little bit more in the wild.
Yeah, definitely. And Rod seemed like he was very amicable with you guys at the Arizona workout as well. That's something that I also highlighted. But, I want to see more from Terrell Buckley. I want to see more from Reggie Barlow, Hines Ward. I want to see it. Like I said, I would just love to see more from all of them in general and just kind of see them all continue to be more inclusive and sort of be able to carry the mantle. And like you said, it's maybe older cut cloth or people who have already been to the business so many times that just are like, I don't want to do this. I want to have to deal with this. I mean, it's kind of like in college football, for example, when you start to realize that some coaches are having to deal with this whole NIL thing and trying to recruit people in a different way than they've been used to for their entire careers. And suddenly they have to like change their philosophy, and all of a sudden it's just almost too much, or they just can't keep up or whatever. Or it's an inconvenience. So I just wonder if there's a way for the league to be able to inspire or at least encourage these individuals to kind of hold up their end of the bargain as far as promotion.
What I do like about this, though, because I'm worried, like, what this looks like next week. Like, I'm worried, like, what is the team unveils? Is it, I actually really kind of liked what the USFL did last year. We had the team names, but then when we did the uniforms, and it was, one every hour from, I think it was 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. or whatever, because they would only do things like at 8 a.m. Pacific time. They refuse to kind of adjust. At least the XFL seems to be hitting like 10 a.m. Pacific. I like that. Even 8 a.m. Pacific is fine, but I like that. Like the one every hour, kind of making it be something you live with all day. Like, do we get a press release? Do we get a video? The XFL before, remember they had, I think it was just a video that came on. It was like a Facebook Live, and they played, and they had like the dragons swimming over and all that stuff. So maybe you can do that. Maybe you can do, the virtual whatever. And then, like you said, we've got Rob Woodson in Vegas, potentially Becht in St. Louis. I like immediately getting in, like we're getting on the ground now. Like, we have to start promoting these local markets, because I'll tell you, no one didn't see, like, my neighbor knows that the Dragons are coming back because he sees me with my hat on, but like no one knows that these things are coming back right now. I think that's being taken for granted.
I think so too. I mean, look, yes. Are you going to have fans who buy tickets? Yes. But are you going to have fans engaged locally? You have to be able to get that groundwork done. And like you said, it's I think part of it again is how much information the general public has, and all we know is team cities. We haven't gotten the most crucial information, which we're presumably getting next week. But then after that, are you going to be able to see more engagement? I really think it's not going to be really full head of steam until the draft comes, until like people know, okay, who's on my team? Like, who am I supposed to care about? Why should I care about this player or about this coach or about this situation? That's when I think it's really going to be more like it's more reality for people. That's when they can really start to build the hype, and that won't be until mid-November. That'll be, so.
Oh, so if we get, and then we'll talk team names, and we'll get to alumni. So it's September, so the 28th, right? So we get team names next week, presumably Wednesday the 28th. Then you get uniforms, presumably, right, in October. We have draft November, training camps December, right, then January. So, I mean, you're hitting tentpole events there, which is what I've been concerned about with the USFL returning in season 2 is that, like, how many tentpole events do we have to, like, really, okay, we're rallying everyone around here. Like, I just think, like, what things could I do a live show for? Like, well, like uniforms unveilings or whatever, team names. But, like, how many things? So does that timeline make sense? Uniform, nicknames next week, team names, colors, uniforms October before the draft?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, you have to have the full identity rolled out before you be able to say, instead of saying like X player is going to be playing in St. Louis and he'll be wearing this color. Okay, but what's his uniform going to look like? Can I start to visualize? Can you start to like Photoshop people into the uniforms? That's what people love to do, right? They're always like, oh, I can see what they look like, before they even start playing. You need to at least have that on the table, or at least be able to get people to like kind of visualize it. If you don't give people something to visualize, they won't be able to really engage themselves fully with it, or be able to just sort of daydream about what they could potentially see on the field months down the road. So yes, absolutely. I think that is all needs to be unveiled by the time the draft rolls around in order to really get people involved in it.
I still can't get used to Baker Mayfield in the Panthers uniform. Like that still feels like a bad Photoshop to me every time I see, like, I'm watching the highlights. I'm like, this is not real.
Yeah, that one's pretty weird. I'm trying to think. There's got to be someone else. There's always just like one weird combo where I'm just like, why in the world? How did that person end up there? I mean, like that was me and Brady, like Tom Brady, his first year in Tampa Bay. I was just like, this is so weird not seeing him in Patriot colors. I've gotten more used to it now, but at first it was just a very odd sign. And even still, my brain is just like 5% off when I look at him, but most of that's been colored in now by like the last 3 years.
I've seen people post online XFL uniform reveals like at the draft, like the player comes out. Like, I hate that idea. Let's keep it separate. Like you say, let's build like uniform unveils. That's a major tentpole, at least for the hardcore fans. I don't know how many casuals get off on that, but that was it. I remember I was filming an event at I had to fly down to Vegas to film an event at the circle thing, the Ferris wheel for like a corporate gig. And I'm literally sitting there on my phone, like refreshing the XFL site, like to try to get the uniforms. I mean, it was a big deal back then. And I think that, obviously if they do it right, and I presume they will, it will also be an event this time.
Yeah, no, that's dropping way too much info at once. Like that's something that I think I think us media members have realized that like this is not a league that is going to info dump us. Like that's not how it's going to work. It's going to be slow, methodical trickle. And I know that's frustrating for the fans. It's frustrating for everyone because there was so much that was already laid before. And there's a presumption as to how many people are coming back and how many teams are coming back, but we don't fully know yet. I don't know what the correct analogy is, but it's like almost half knowing and half not knowing at the same time. And I think that's why this like sort of in between nebulous that people are stuck in right now is maybe why it's so frustrating. If we didn't know anything, if we had never seen this league before, I think the curiosity factor would be more rewarded, or at least it would be more acceptable. Like with the USFL last year, I didn't know who the teams were going to be. Like, could it be old trademarks? Sure. Could it be like old players getting involved and being in team managements? Maybe. Like, I don't know, but I wasn't really sure. And so there wasn't anything to base it off of, as opposed to the XFL, which we all kind of assumed we could base it off something. And now we're just sort of like just continuing to be in this holding pattern that we've been in for 2.5 years.
Well, it's also, and it begs the question, because obviously, and I want to get your opinion on which names return here, before we turn the page to the alumni. But like even when they announced the USFL stuff, like I still don't have the biggest identity with a lot of these teams, right? Like the Breakers a little bit, right? And Slaughter, and I know that like their social was pretty good, at least in terms of like memeing kind of after the games. But it's weird and I say this as an XFL fan, it's weird that so much has been held like dire from 5 weeks of play and whatever from these XFL teams where, like if the Vipers come back, if they don't, I'm just kind of like, whatever. Like, I wouldn't care. They're like, well, what if the Dragons don't? I'm like, I don't really care. I mean, I would still cover the league even if Seattle didn't have a team because that was, we've been discussing long enough where we didn't know if Seattle was coming back or whatever. But it's weird how hung up on this the XFL people are when I don't really sense that same, like, I'm a Philadelphia Stars pride guy, with the USFL. Am I missing something?
No, I don't think you are. And I think it's 2 reasons. One, it's because fans were actually able to show up, right? Like fans were like, hey, I put my money into this thing. I'm invested in it. I mean, look at your friend Van. I mean, look at all the things he's put together and surrounding that team. I mean, he has his own like custom rain jacket. He's been in front row the entire time. Like he's put his capital investment. When you put your money into something, yeah, you're going to be invested in it. And you hope it sticks around. With the USFL, I mean, there were barely any fans there. No one was really engaged with it except for, I guess, the Birmingham contingency. That was about it. And so, yeah, you're not having as much capital or like your time, maybe not even your time invested into it. So that's kind of part of it as well. It also has to go with like team identity as far as, what was the offense like? What was the defense like? What players really stood out? And I'm not saying the USFL didn't have that either. I will say, like, for example, the Philadelphia Stars, I really thought their offense was really exciting. I like Bart Andrews. I like Case Cookins. I like Brian Scott. I want to see that again. I can latch on to that. I can see that. I'm not sure if I feel that way about the other franchises, but like at least the XFL had that kind of identity with every team. Whether they performed well or not is another, whole nother thing. But like there was an identity and there was time and there was money invested. I think that's why people are so anxious and so antsy about it, because they're like, was that thing that I put all my time into like 2.5 years ago, is it going to pay off or something like that? I think that's why.
I do think it's also like how we just remember it being. Like, have you ever seen, it was like when Legend of Zelda, like Ocarina of Time, it was like when they re-released that on like the 3DS or whatever, and it was like, this is what you remember the Nintendo 64 version looking like, because the Nintendo 64 version actually looked like trash. And so it's kind of like, we just remember these things like we're, XFL had, Wildcats had issues and the Vipers had issues, and we had quarterback carousel in Tampa, and we had, what was it? Quentin Flowers fighting with Mark Trestman. And man, this is deep pull for me right now. But but we had all this stuff going on, and I think like we just remember this so much more rosely than even maybe it was. And it is that like when you're a kid and you remember playing Mario and like what you think it looked like, and it didn't really look like that at all. It was kind of in your mind.
Yeah, I mean, there were some franchises that were like trending downward. I mean, the Renegades were in trouble. Like Landry Jones was out; they had no quarterback. If that season went on, I don't know how that would have ended for them. Wildcats, I mean, like we kept expecting the Wildcats to kind of get back into it, and their offense was sort of starting to pick up steam. I don't know if they would have finished the season well. The Vipers were what, 1-4. I mean, they were almost in the tank. Like but I've seen so many random Viper jerseys. Like that is the most like in the wild jersey I've seen of any of the XFL teams. I don't know why, but I always see some random Vipers jersey here and there. And it really just kind of befuddles me, because I'm like, that team wasn't really, I mean, they had a lot of talent, but they didn't really do anything. And like, they had one of the lower fan attendances in the league. I that one always kind of puzzles me, but that's the thing though. It's just like you said, with like Ocarina of Time, just people latch onto this thing and they're like, this was fantastic. This was great. And it's always going to be great. You can't say anything else otherwise. And then something new comes along and they're like, nah, that's not the same thing. It's not even close to this. And I mean, you're right. It's nostalgia. Like people really get nostalgic about these things, even if it wasn't that great to begin with sometimes.
So final question before we get on. I just got an email today. It looks like the DC Defenders trademark, they're running into some issues with maintaining the copyright for all sorts of different items, because they have to, like we have the Markcast trademark, in case you weren't curious, but we have the Markcast trademark for like digital downloads and podcasts and stuff. And but like the XFL, they obviously have like clothing and like hats is a different thing, and then they have like TV related to sports and streaming, all that kind of stuff. And it looked like they're running into certain issues with the DC trademark with the Defenders. Could that have to do with the well, who would that have to do with? Because I always get confused with the Guardians. Why would the DC? Well, we don't need to get down that road unless you have something to say. But I always get confused, Guardians and Defenders. But Defenders presumably returning. Where do you stick of 8? I posted the Twitter poll yesterday. Where do you stick of 8 with how many franchises are going to return here next week?
I think your poll said 5 to 6 was one of the options, correct? It was 3 to 4. So it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, correct?
That was how I did that? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can count too. I have, okay, so I think I had about 5 names. So I need to go off the top of my head. So it was Arlington Renegades. It was DC Defenders. It was the Seattle Dragons, the Houston Roughnecks. Well, actually, no, it can't be Roughnecks. Sorry, because of the lawsuit. That's 3. You have the Vipers is interesting because based on the colors, we think it's going to be the Vipers, right? Because now I know the colors haven't been officially announced, but they had that stischel of all the head coaching announcements on the XFL page, and we kind of speculated, oh, that color's returning. Oh, that color is different. So the bright green was still there. So I think the Vipers will stay. If it changes, I wouldn't be surprised. But okay, so that's 4, right? And then as far as the other teams go, I mean, I guess let's see. So the St. Louis Battlehawks. So that's 5. That's 5 that I feel pretty confident will come back. It's kind of teetering. It could be 4, could be 5, but I think 5 come back, and I think 3 of them are going to be new. So I think it's going to be Houston. It's going to be San Antonio. And I guess presumably it's going to, obviously Las Vegas. Yeah. So I'd say 5 is like the max of number that are going to return. And it could be 4.
I'm curious. I mean, I would think they keep the Roughnecks, right? They change the logo, right? I mean, do you see that where if we keep the Houston franchise and just change the logo? Like, I really haven't done too much team name speculation. I tried to not do, but this is good now. This is the week. I think we are fair to speculate now. The week before, I didn't want to do this 6 months ago, but do they keep Houston and just change the logo to I don't even know what it would be.
Man, I liked the old logo that looked like the Oilers. I really enjoyed that. Unfortunately, they can't use that, which is not even.
So did the NFL.
Well, then they should have. The Titans should have kept it. Then that's my argument. But I get it. They can keep that in case for further use and property ownership. I get it. But I think they're just going to go a wholesale change. I think they're going to change everything about Houston. I think they're going to change logo and name. Yeah, I know that sounds controversial, but I think they're going to go like wholesale change. And I hope the Roughneck fans are ready for that, because I know that's the one team that was really great in the league, right? Like they're 5-0. PJ Walker was great. The offense was great, so on and so on. So that might be a little rough, no pun intended, for people to get used to, but I think that might have a wholesale change. I wouldn't be surprised. As far as like some of the other teams like Las Vegas, I know Outlaws has been out there because that's like an old trademark that's been floating out there. Could be. I also wonder if the league is going to do more like the AAF did, where it's kind of like they did themes according to like what the team was and where it was stationed. Like, for example, the San Diego Fleet, because of the naval presence. You can't do the Commanders, but the San Antonio Commanders because of the military ties, and also like there's history as far as that goes. And then other things like kind of having that sort of tied into everything. I think they're just going to go like more generic names, like they're going to go an animal or person or something like not. I don't think they're going to go like history so much. I think it's just going to be more like the USFL. I think it's going to be more like those names.
I guess I forgot to mention too, Rod Woodson on Pat McAfee show said that the team name was Dangerous, I believe was the quotes he used. And it sounds like they have the uniforms all done. I mean, obviously they will not unveil them next week, I do not imagine. But it sounded like he goes, oh yeah, ours look the coolest. Or I mean, they've at least been able to see like mock-ups and stuff. All that stuff. I don't know with the team names. I mean, I'm wearing my Washington Commanders hat. Like, I think you get over it very quickly, I was someone that really liked the Washington football team name. I did not want them to move off that. Now I have my Commanders. I'm all in on Command. I mean, it's funny how quickly that moves on when like the new merchandise comes out, and you're like, oh, that's really cool. Like I want that. So I think people will move on. I like the Outlaws. I see something like. I don't see the gambling. They want people have said like the Blackjacks or the Aces or whatever. I mean, to me, you own the Outlaws trademark from back in '01. I would bring that back. I do see the Vipers moving to Orlando. That would be what I would do. I don't see that. I don't know why. Maybe you want to rewrite something there, but you do that. And then obviously the San Antonio. We've seen like the Roadrunner. There's a lot of ones that have been used before. I see the people in San Antonio. I haven't seen anything too fresh with the San Antonio ones.
Okay, but you see the Roadrunners thing is funny because UTSA plays in the same dome and they already use Roadrunners. So that'd be really confusing for people. Like, hey, there's a Roadrunners game. Like, it's spring. Why are the Roadrunners playing? Like, they play in the fall. What are you talking about? That would be too confusing. They're not going to do that. I think it's hard to say. Like, I don't know if you could get I don't think any Texas team is allowed to use the trademark like Cowboys, for example. That's probably a no-go, especially if you're anywhere near Jerryland. For Orlando, I mean, I've seen like things like the Orcas or like the Gators, which again is already Florida trademark. Like you have to be. That's the thing. You kind of start to run out of trademarks as far as like things in the area that people already identify with. So you have to be careful about that as well. It's really tricky to say. Honestly, I've been trying to rack my brain. I just haven't really been able to settle on a team name. I'm not, to be honest, like. It's hard for me to like articulate like I'm not a PR person, so I'm not sure or a marketing person, so I'm not sure what a good trademark is per se. There's just things that I see and I like I can tell you, for example, no offense, Reed, but like when Commanders came out, I was just like, I don't know about that. Like I'm not feeling it, but that's more of like an initial reaction thing. Right. So I guess anything that sort of stays to any sort of identity in the area would be great. But if it's just going to be some generic name, it'd be cool if you had something like the Battlehawk, because you're wondering what the heck's a Battlehawk. Like, let me ask you, would you go for something that's not confusing, but like a term that somebody doesn't know and they have to figure it out? Like, would you be okay with that?
Well, yeah, and I was actually I was talking with listener Max yesterday. Yeah, when the Battlehawks came out, that was not a widely received name, and it's funny now that is the most beloved name now of the original XFL names, because that was not. It's good to trademark. You can protect those trademarks if you come up with something that, I mean, what is a Markcast? I don't know, but it's something that we talk about on the show. So, it's funny. I'm looking here. I did not podcast the AAF, but I do love these names, like the Atlanta Legends, Birmingham Iron, Memphis Express, Orlando Apollos, Arizona Hotshots, Salt Lake Stallions. Obviously, we couldn't use that anymore because of San Antonio Commanders and the San Diego Fleet. Like I like the AAF names. I think those were pretty strong and, like you said, related to the area that they're in the country and the city and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I really did. I really identified. I remember when I went to Fleet Games and people were wearing like naval ships on their heads. Like they made like foam hats. They made homemade hats out of them. I was like, that's clever. I like that. And it's, again, it ties to the military ties of the area. And then I really like the Apollos, obviously, because of space travel and the NASA programming and all that. It was really cool that they had like Apollos there. That was really awesome. I think they had I think the other one I liked the Memphis Express for some reason. I think that was really cool. They really did have some cool logos, cool team colors, team names. But it just, obviously didn't last. But I thought the branding itself for each individual team was actually pretty good for a startup league. I really liked it. And so again, if the XFL wants to go towards history, that's fine. If they don't, it's probably going to just be some like generic name.
All right. So good with that. Any other thoughts on team names? Any other Rod Woodsons of the world before we move on to our deep dive in the Alumni Academy and the time I have left booked with you today?
The only thing I'll say is I think my guess, like I said, is they're going to go more towards like the individual presentations for like YouTube. Like they have like a YouTube video probably for like each team next week would be like my guess. And then they're going to do like the formal presentation at the dinner later on that night. So I think it's going to be like an all day event kind of. So they're going to go from like morning, presentation to everyone, drop the news online, and then later in the evening go to like the dinner and the coronation. That's how I see it playing out, but we'll see.
Give us a time. I want to do a watch along. I want to do a stream along. I want to be a part of this. So, let us know. 7 a.m. Pacific, whatever time. Like, I want to be a part of this. Yeah, the night one, that'll be like when they have the uniforms, and then we have like the YouTube videos, like Brendan Silver's like running in with Kenneth, I can't remember who he was with, our running back that got hurt that never played. But yeah, like Brandon Silver's running in with his Dragons jersey. So obviously we won't get the uniforms, but I think having Becht walked in like, that's Anthony Becht's music. Like, have him come in, like, that'd be hot. But I'll tell you, we don't have a venue for the Vegas. Well, we don't have a venue for where Vegas is playing. We don't have a venue for the event next week. Like, we gotta be, we gotta have 2 years here. Let's get going on this. Let's figure out where are we going to Cabo Wabo? Like, what are we doing in Vegas? I want to have my trip planned.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, the Vegas venue thing is weird. I'm not sure why that hasn't been settled yet. That's like the time is ticking on that one, especially if they're trying to get people involved in buying tickets. Like, obviously St. Louis is doing fine. But the Vegas thing really needs to be settled. Like, people need to know, okay, am I going to be in Sam Boyd Stadium? Am I going to be in Allegiant Stadium? Which one am I going to be in? I don't know, because this needs to be settled. I'm a little not concerned, but I'm like wondering why that hasn't been settled yet, especially because that was announced over a month ago. Like that it's been some time. There's something up with that. Yeah, July 24th was the official announcement. So yeah, that's 2 months ago that we've been sort of waiting on, like, okay, what's the situation with Vegas? Like, if I want to know, I want to know what's going on there too, as is everyone else.
Yeah. All right. So before, and this kind of got lost in all the news. I mean, we've been tracking the NFL Alumni Academy and all that stuff, and the big announcements from the XFL back a few months ago. I think it was back in April. They made the initial announcement about their partnership. Got lost in the news last week. Like, they'll do this sometimes. Like, I want the ITL people, like Neil and everyone over there, like, we need to schedule these Zooms, because the last one they had about the player pay structure, that came out right after the cities. Like, it was the Monday after, it was during the Arlington press conference. Like, that night they had this, like, we need to schedule these better, because again, too many messages, people can't follow. Now, we had last week, following the coaching announcements, it was like a Zoom call, and it was with Dean Dalton, who is he's the founder of the Academy, and then Neil Stratton of Inside the League. They're talking about how the partnership's going to work, what the Alumni Academy is, in general, now moving into year 3, what's going on. So Andy is doing a deep dive along with listener Max, helped out, fill out some details as well. Initial thoughts, and then we'll talk through some of the details about like how this is going to help players get back to the NFL.
Yeah, I want to give a big shout out to Max Levy at Max Scouts on Twitter. He has been really helpful. He put together a Google Doc for me. He had a lot of info penned down. He's been really good in this collaboration. I'm still working on some details and kind of getting more of like a finer article out about it, but he's been really helpful. So shout out to him. But my initial thoughts on this, it's very well structured. I think it's very explicit. It's very detailed as far as what the players are going to be provided, where they're going to be, what they're doing, who the coaches are that are involved. Some of the coaches being XFL coaches already that are going to be involved with this, and then other people who are maybe more familiar names, such as, for example, like Anthony Munoz, Hall of Fame offensive lineman. He's going to be involved. Mike Tice, former head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, who is on Jay's podcast. We've talked about him before. We've also had a couple other people, Ted Cottrell, defensive coordinator. He was the coordinator for the then San Diego Chargers. And so we got some familiar names. It just like my initial thought is it's very well structured, and there was a lot of details. It didn't leave a ton of questions as far as like the setup for these guys. And so I really like that this was so well thought out, or at least detailed in this way. And it's good to have this information, especially more so again for the agents and for the players who want to be involved with this.
Yeah, so I'm going to link the YouTube link on the podcast this week. I will tell you, when I was rewatching it this morning, kind of getting ready for this, the 122 views on the YouTube link is not indicative of a high viewership in terms of like, we have fans that like want news and how is this going to work? And we have players, right? Like, how can I get involved? And we're sending out, hey, can you retweet my, my demo tape, my player highlight reel, all this stuff. Like, this is like real tangible stuff happening alongside. Like, I would watch this Zoom link. I would check this out. I would figure out what this is. I would apply to be a part of this academy. Charlie, he's like the PR guy for that, was part of the video as well, talking about that. But basically, they started the Alumni Academy back in 2020 during the COVID year. The first 2 years, limited in terms of the number of positions. Now they're expanding it out to all position groups, right? And it's running alongside the NFL season starting in October. They've moved headquarters from Canton, Ohio at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which is interesting. Like, they were doing construction and stuff there. I don't know if that got delayed. They're going to be about a mile down the road from Choctaw Stadium. And so moving through kind of the XFL preseason, the NFL current season, and then kind of funneling players into the NFL out. Like I said, it's kind of like the Survivor Redemption Island. Like, okay, we're out, we're filling in the ranks, and then once the NFL season concludes and the Alumni Academy sessions end, because I think there's like 5 or 6 along the way, from October to January, then those players are going to be able to opt into the XFL, presumably work through the season, and then try to get their way, like I said, Redemption Island style with Survivor, back into the NFL. Does that vibe? Did I say anything out of turn?
No, you didn't. I think the whole thing about it is that there's I like the fact that they moved more in the hub setting, which is kind of like what we were talking about before, right? They kind of became part of the hub. And the whole thing is to cut costs and all that. So they're going to be said they were going to be staying, I think, at the Sheraton Hotel, about a mile away, as you mentioned. So the Survivor Island analogy is kind of interesting, but I think it's just the fact that, again, these guys who are not floating on a practice squad, not floating into the ether, just being out there with nowhere to go. I think that the fact that they have kind of another safe space, I guess, I'm not sure if that's the right word for it, but another place for them to go in order to be able to kind of get reps, get training, get coaching, being able to keep themselves up to speed, not have to do any home workouts, not have to be able to keep this up on their own. They're able to kind of go somewhere, and they're able to kind of house themselves and be able to be in some sort of functioning capacity as far as keeping up their training and their regimen and all that, so they can stay in football shape. Again, that's the biggest thing, right? Staying in shape for football. If they need to be called to duty, or if they need to be assigned to a team or whatever, they can be in that cycle already. That's kind of the biggest idea. And again, doing that in the off season of the NFL is a huge part of it too. So not just being all right, well, I guess I'll just have to wait till OTAs roll around again before I get training again. No, you can actually be in a training spot before all that happens.
Yeah. So the number one goal of the Alumni Academy, right, is facilitating the need that the NFL teams have all season for, new healthy players. People get hurt, things happen, okay, next man up, we're calling up people. So the Alumni Academy, keeping people, like you said, game shape, practicing. I also liked that they were talking, we're going to work with the players kind of to develop their deficiencies, right? So maybe if someone made some poor choices off the field, hey, maybe we can kind of coach them up that way, kind of work them through what does it look like to be a professional athlete? You're someone that needs to work on, strength or conditioning or route running. Let's build up these. I think it's also interesting. We had Steve Guerra on the show a month ago, maybe now, with Breakaway Data, talking about that as well, that they're going to use, their data. Maybe this player is great in 7 of 8 tangibles or 6 of 8. What are the things that we can spotlight to kind of build that up? So the Alumni Academy, it's going to exist alongside the NFL all through the season. But then the secondary goal of that is if you did not get picked up to an NFL camp, if you completed the academy, right? Because you apply, they choose to bring you in, and then you make it the way through. I guess, you could get cut, right? But if you make it through and you graduate with the academy in your session, then you will be eligible to go onto the XFL roster, which, comparison to the USFL, I think, is a more favorable timeline to get back into that, early summer, training camps and OTAs and all that with the NFL.
Yeah, and also there's different sessions that people can also get involved with as well. There's different times. Just to read off some of them from this year. So, for example, from October 3rd to October 21st, October 24th to November 11th, November 14th to December 2nd, and then December 4th to December 23rd. So there's also different like sessions that people could be involved with as well. So there's just like different timelines for people to be involved. Interestingly enough, I'm not sure if you want to get into this right now, but about the timeline as far as like players from other leagues can also get involved with as well. That's also something that I noticed as well. It said that CFL players, for example, were eligible to be able to join after the CFL season concludes, which will be in late November. And then the other one, which also has a bit of semantics around too, is USFL players. Now this depends on it. It says that USFL players that opted into that 2-year contract deal that they signed earlier this year, that they at least are allowed to be invited to the sessions or to the camps, but they don't necessarily, obviously they may not be able to actually participate or whichever the semantics are with their contract, but they're at least allowed to be invited. So as far as timing options go, yes, this is much more variable, and it's something that is more available to people, even if they're in like different leagues, or if they're trying to get more reps, or if they're just trying to seek more training. As we've talked about ad nauseum, the whole deal with them being able to kind of glide into the summer programming for the NFL, if they're trying to get involved with that, is obviously much more favorable in this setting than it is versus, say the USFL, where you're playing a full season and then suddenly training camp rolls around and you've already taken basically a full season's worth of physical punishment. So this is also something to look into and consider as well, as far as the timing goes for all of this other logisticalness.
Well, I like being able, like you say, they're participating, in like 7-on-7 practice. The tape is being shared with the NFL camps. The NFL, they have access. They add basically all 32 NFL teams have the ability to log in, see who's available, see who's playing, be able to see, their tape. I just, excuse me, as I'm coughing here, just as someone involved in like media and like, distribution of I just think it would be fascinating, be a part of that. We're getting these tapes, we're building these databases, all the teams are going to be able to do that. The interesting thing is, obviously it's tuition, right? It's like an alumni academy, so you're paying to be a part of this. And this is Max sent over some clarification stuff as well. Dues are only paid when the player is getting paid. So if you're on a practice squad, if you're inactive, if you're in the XFL and you're not active, you're not paying the dues. It seems like a really friendly way that way. If you're in the XFL, I believe the XFL will pay out the tuition from partial of your paycheck, and then you're able to take home a lot of it. So it's obviously you're paying, you're being a part of it, but it's really set up in a way that it's not I'm taking an advanced degree online. I'm going to go pay $70,000 and then hope that here I get a job. I'm going to go back to school, get my bachelor's in computer science, and then hope I can figure something out. It's very player friendly, both whether you're in the NFL or the XFL, in terms of not paying if you're sitting at home not getting paid. You're only paying out when you're actually taking home money.
Exactly. Yeah. No, they're being more proactive in terms of having all of that in consideration for people who aren't involved or people who are not able to pay out everything that they need to in order to get all their resources there. So I think for that matter, it's very good that they can have that option for them. And also in terms of the services that are provided, for example, meals will be provided from Monday through Friday, 3 meals a day. There'll be a personal chef. The only thing I think that are external costs for the players are traveling and weekend meals. Those are the only things that they're going to also have to expend on their own. So that's also a perk for the players as well. And so that kind of the cost for the players is not so immense for them to be involved in this whole operation, and it's something that's more rewarding to them and obviously the league if they're able to move on and be able to be in the league itself, in the XFL, and be able to move on into that field. So that's something that I think, in my opinion, seems like a win-win for both sides.
Oh, it really makes sense. And my question is, this exists, and I'm, trying to do the timelines and math in my head. This exists alongside Survivor. It really is like Survivor. If you watch the last couple of seasons of Survivor before 40, and then I fell off, but we have people, we're playing the game on the island, and then you get sent to the other island. You're trying to work your way back onto the island. But them existing through the NFL season, through January, and then it does feel like then it is the XFL's role in their partnership here to carry these players along, give them the actual game tape, maybe that they weren't able to get during the NFL season. I'm curious, without bad mouthing the USFL's timeline too much, but, it does feel like I didn't like this year USFL guys playing 12 weeks of competitive football and then immediately walking on to an NFL camp the next week. I like the XFL. We're done in April. We can kind of take a month, start getting into OTAs, do some workouts, things like that, and then ramp up into training camp. It just feels a little safer than like I'm playing football 11 months out of the year.
Yeah, no, as far as player safety goes, obviously that's a huge point of it. And I think in my opinion, now look, you can argue about skill level, you can argue about opportunities and all that. I do think the fatigue level for a lot of these players going in from the USFL was a huge factor as far as being able to just perform. I mean, I hate to say it, but it really sucks, that obviously that Chris Odom got hurt in his short time with the Cleveland Browns, but like that's might have been built up fatigue from the season. He was great. He was relatively healthy. He had performed at an extraordinarily high level with his team. And suddenly here he is coming off the Gamblers roster and going into the NFL, and he gets hurt in camp, and he might have had a chance to make it if he had stayed healthy. I don't know, but I think, that general fatigue is just something that is going to get to you eventually. And it's something that you can't really avoid if you don't have the proper amount of time off in between different seasons. I mean, look, football is a brutal game. It is an absolutely brutal game. And it's something that while it's good to have training and be able to keep conditioning up, there's a difference between that and just going full speed and being involved in a game week to week and then suddenly jumping into a full blown training camp. That's just two different variables that I think is sometimes maybe hard to wrap your head around, because when you're not doing it every single day or doing it every single week, it's hard to imagine just taking that much physical punishment on a weekly basis and then having to engage yourself into it further in less than a month. So I think that's really the biggest thing, again, is the timeline for all these guys to be able to keep themselves in shape, but not have to take any sort of huge physical tolls before they're allowed to show off their skill sets in a bigger arena.
Max has a note here too. So if you go to the practice squad for the NFL, you're paying anywhere from 21 to 34,000. Because you're obviously getting paid more in the NFL. If you go to the XFL, your tuition only ends up being 13,000, presuming you don't end up getting signed to the NFL within 18 months. The XFL will handle 30% net payments for them, and they'll only be taken out, like we said, when the player is active. So again, it really does feel like, not that 13K is not anything, but when you're getting paid and you figure like that's a portion here. Okay, I'm getting paid 55 from the XFL, and then prorated part of that too. They're trying to work it out. I mean, it's not free to kind of run these camps and train and kind of do all that stuff. I will say, having seen, and we have not seen XFL 2023 yet, NFL signings, but we saw XFL 2020 through COVID signings stick with the NFL. USFL going to the NFL. I don't think the USFL timeline works. Like I will say that we're very late in the podcast here, but I don't. We had Rick Saratello on a couple weeks ago, and I don't think it works. I think one guy, people injured, fatigue. I don't know. I mean, am I out of school there?
I mean, it's really tough, especially if you play through the playoffs, right? If you play those extra 2 weeks going into the season, it's just not enough time for people to have time off. Like, it's really, really taxing on the players. And also, again, like, these guys are playing in the middle of the summer. Like, they're playing in July, if you get that far into the season, or even just late June. And it's so hot in the deep South, especially when you're playing in Birmingham at that time of year. I mean, that just will take a lot out of you in order to be able to perform at your highest level and then go into summer training camps. I agree. Like, this timeline, like, might it be good for, as far as like some players to play out of different leagues? Maybe, like, if you're going from the CFL to the USFL, sure, I suppose so. Or if you're going from the end of the NFL season, you get cut for some reason, then you need more reps or something, then yeah, that would be work, but it doesn't work the other way around. Like, it's hard for people who play in the USFL to get involved in the NFL. It's hard for them to jump from the USFL to the CFL. I mean, CFL teams sign players all the time, but just having that accumulated time again of like resting doesn't really work out. Whereas again, like if you're playing earlier in the year, you can have time between that and the CFL season if you want to make that jump. You have time between that and the NFL season. You have opportunities to do that. I think even like the European Football League, like you have time if you really wanted to jump over there for some reason, like you would have more time for that than you would if you like started in the USFL season. So yeah, like all these, there's a bunch of different leagues that have different timelines, but if we're really looking hardcore at like the two main spring leagues in the US, yeah, the USFL is at a disadvantage because of where it's stationed, when it plays, the weather conditions that it plays under, and the ability for the players again to be able to recover. The timeline unfortunately doesn't make sense. Is it really patriotic that they can have like a championship game on July 4th? Yeah, it's great. That's awesome. That's fun. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out for everyone. I know for sure it works out for the players. It didn't really work out for me. I know it didn't work out for you as far as going to the championship game that weekend. There were kind of other things going on, so it was a little difficult in that way too.
Well, I don't know if we should base the success of the timeline of a league on if we can attend the championship game. But yeah. I will say, I think Emery Hunt, that was on a couple weeks ago, really said it best that XFL, and especially with this Alumni Academy, is really set up the bounce back and forth. And going right back to the NFL, or maybe something didn't work out, or the roster didn't work out, it got cut. USFL, their timeline is a little bit more set up for like that. I'm Kyle Sloter, bounced around for 5-6 practice squads. Not really sure what I'm doing at this point. Like, let me go play some more football, try to get some game tape, try to develop that. I think it's two specific types of players in those leagues, and I guess that's important to remember when we're discussing this, but I don't think it's A player in each league. I think both of these leagues, especially with this partnership and the timeline, are set up for slightly different players that they're appealing to.
I agree. So, well, let me ask you this, Reed, then. Do you think that these leagues should lean themselves into different styles of what kind of players they need? Because, for example, if the XFL is just going to be developing players for the NFL, which they clearly seem like they are completely gun-ho doing, if they want to just be like a developmental league, not an official developmental league, but a de facto developmental league for players that are going off to the NFL, if they want players to move on, then should the USFL just lean more into, say, like the CFL level, where it's like, look, these are our players, these are who they are, you identify with them, they're involved with the community. I know they're not in their own stadiums yet or their own cities, but like if they want to go forward, like, and survive, do they want to be more like, we have these players, these are who they are, this is our identity, and you will recognize these players year in and year out? Like, do you think they should go more that way? Because if it's not going to work out from a development standpoint for these players to go back to the NFL, maybe they could go the other way. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll answer this and then I'll head you out here in a minute. I don't think both leagues can exist with, look how many players we signed this year, look how many players we signed. Like, I don't think that can be your calling card. I think the USFL should focus more on, we are the TNA, back when TNA competed with WWE. It's like, okay, we're not quite the number one A tier, but we've got our stars. You know them. You come and watch them. Like CFL, slightly different. We're not hearing every day, hey, see, this X 15 guys got signed off CFL rosters to the NFL. I mean, obviously that happens, right? Players move, but I think, and I don't like the XFL having that identity. Don't get me wrong. I don't like the XFL having the identity of like, we want to streamline players to the NFL at all costs. I don't like that either. I prefer the model of, yeah, okay, we're going to lose 5 or 6 guys maybe, but we got 10 really good guys on every team that you want to like. They're just slightly below the level that you're looking at, but it's still going to be, competitive, quality, entertaining football. But yeah, I do think both leagues need to develop different identities.
Well, I mean, based on how many people this year have been imploring the CFL to raise the cap, or at least change it so much that Nathan Rourke can stick around, that tells me one thing: they really like to keep their guys around. So like that's the thing. They know who their talented players are. There's like identities. Like, if I may just go like slightly off the path here. Like the CFL have already started to think about like, oh, there's Jake Mayer on Calgary. I have him to look forward to in the future. I have maybe Trey Ford in Edmonton, or even like, Taylor Cornelius. Taylor Cornelius signed up this week, and he's going to be down the road. Like I'm already starting to think about like, okay, who are these players I'm going to be familiar with long term in this league? And that's something that fans think about all the time. Why do you think fans buy jerseys of players? Right? They are like, this guy is on my team. I'm going to be invested in him in this team. That's what I think about. When I buy jerseys, I think about who is this guy? Who are they going to be involved with? And how long are they going to be here? Like, that's something I think about. So again, that's part of fan engagement. We'll see what the XFL, how they kind of maneuver around that, or if they're just going to sell like jerseys with numbers on them like college teams do, which I've also done too. But if they're just going to go that route, for example, they're not going to have player names templated on the back of their jerseys if they're just trying to jettison them out in like 3 months. That's something that all of these leagues have to ask themselves.
With that, Andy, thank you so much for your time. Maybe we'll find time next week. Lots of excitement coming on. I really appreciate it and your deep dive, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Reed. Thank you as always.
Well, I think this is a third time appearance on the show now. We have Jason Gregor. I said, I got to get you on before I watch my Kraken have another, hopefully not as disappointing this season, but I think we have some good moves there.
Yeah, they'll be better, Reed. They'll win a few more. I'm not sure they'll be playoff better, but they'll be better.
Yeah, hard to be worse. We have Jason Gregor here, Jason Gregor Show, talking CFL, a little USFL today with Garrett Marino. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing excellent, man. It's perfect time of year. There's so much sports going on. It's like drinking out of a fire hose if you're a sports guy. I love it.
Yeah, I think my wife is now understanding, like, okay, now we have CFL on Friday, and then we have, and then we got doubleheader Monday Night Football. First off, just because, and I hope sincerely this is dated by the time we talk about it, but it came out Sunday night via his Twitter that, of course, has blocked all of us that have talked naysay about him. But Garrett Marino, former, Saskatchewan Rough Rider, let go. Basically, Randy Ambrosie said, we don't want you in the league anymore, has announced that via his Twitter he signed with the USFL Panthers ahead of their April season 2. Thoughts on Garrett Marino? I mean, obviously we didn't talk to you about his suspension and release, and then now him going to another league.
Well, Garrett Marino is a cheap shot artist. I think that was fair to say. At the same time, it doesn't mean that he never killed anybody. He didn't maim anybody. So does that mean he should never be able to play football again? I'm not a real big cancel culture that people should be done forever. It's really easy to say that. I'm not that guy. So we'll see how he plays. He never really seemed to learn. Although I will say, the last hit he delivered, if that hit would have been the first one, no one even talks about it, right? So I think you always have to take the entire picture into context. The last one came, they're like, well, this guy's not learning. I'm like, well, I actually thought he was learning because the last hit wasn't even physical. It was sure, it was a little bit late, but my goodness, on the scale of 1 to 10 for a real hard hit, that was not very hard, right? So I understand why another league would sign him. When he plays, he's a good player. And so, maybe he'll have learned. And I'll say this, if he goes down there and plays really well, as far as, not doing anything stupid, someone would probably take a chance, because the only thing that he did wrong was he couldn't control himself at times for some cheap shots. He definitely, the Caleros ones, that was pretty ugly, no question. But the last one he did was, I honestly didn't really have an issue with the last one. I think it was more of a reputation than anything else. But if we just take that hit on its own, separate, it's barely even talked about, right? But it was a culmination of things. So I understood why the CFL did what they did, but I can also understand why someone's giving him a chance to play.
No, I mean, that was the thing, because obviously it went viral, and, one of the Ticats fans, shared the video, it's 150,000 views on that. And, I got a lot of people on my side, same thing like you. Well, that wasn't that bad of a hit. I'm like, yeah, but it's it's the totality of it, and it's injuring Mazzoli and going in the longest suspension and coming back, targeting Lucky Whitehead with the helmet to helmet. I mean, totality there, just surprising that, I don't know, I just feel like there's so many other players out there we could sign. But I guess, like you said, is he worth the headache?
Well, but is he a headache? How many of the fans of his new team really followed him in the CFL? Some, but you know what? Hey, bad boys sell sometimes. Let's be honest, Reed. So if all of a sudden people are like, oh, geez, I got to go, if you have some bloodthirsty fans hey, let's go see what he does, right? Sometimes, hey, some will say there's no such thing as bad press, right? So if you get a controversial player who, like I said, This guy, when you consider what some people have done and got back on the football field, hello, Deshaun Watson, then let's be a little bit more. Too often we want to be all just, people love to stand on their pulp. Oh yeah, he should be done forever. I'm like, oh my goodness. Have you never done anything stupid in your life? Like, again, he didn't kill anyone. He's cheap shot, right? Bad concussion. He got kicked out of the league. That's pretty severe punishment, for goodness sakes, right? It's pretty severe. So now we'll see if we learn from it.
Speaking of, you said Ambrosie came out, right? Basically told the other teams, I'm not going to ratify this if you try to sign them. I mean, basically blackballed him. Were you happy? Because then we're going to talk here about Ambrosie maybe not stepping up yet, or as we record this, but happy that Ambrosie took those steps?
I could see why he did it. I'd be curious, though, like I said, again, if he goes down there, Marino now plays really well in this other league for a bit, does another team look and say, hey, wait a sec, right? Like, this guy's, some guy lied about, his being vaccinated or not. He got back in the league, right? Like, you can forgive people if they show remorse, right? Kosh showed remorse. I have no problem with it. So, if you show remorse, then I don't really have an issue. His actions will be not words. He has to show remorse with his actions on the field. So yeah, I understood why Ambrosie did it. Hey, we cut him. Saskatchewan cut him, and the league said he's done for this year. I don't think it's worthy of a lifetime ban here. Let's be realistic.
And we'll get to Ambrosie with the whole Lions and Calgary brawl, but Vernon Adams, right? I've obviously BCB my team and tracking him and everything, and I didn't feel like he played transcendently, right? On, I guess it was Saturday. My days are all confused with whatever, but him coming into BC trying to right that ship with Nathan Rourke and all that. How do you think he did?
He did all right? Like, it sure shows you just how good Nathan Rourke was. Right, I think that's abundantly clear. That maybe we even took it, kind of underplayed just how good he was and important for them. And obviously that's a huge win for the Lions over Calgary, right? Because a lot of people thought BC was reeling a little bit. So Vernon Adams is another, quarterback's a tough position to play. And could Vernon Adams? I'm not saying he'll do it in BC, but could Vernon Adams become a poor man's Anthony Calvillo, in the sense that I think some people forget Anthony Calvillo, man, took how many years, right? He got traded, he got moved, he wasn't happy. And then finally, he became one of the greatest quarterbacks, the greatest passing quarterback league's ever seen, right? So, I'm not ready to write off Vernon Adams yet at all. And I'm not overly stunned that he put forth a good effort, because he's shown that in the past he's capable of it.
Do you think BC still has a chance to be competitive now?
Well, it definitely helps. There's no question, right? Hey, Winnipeg got spanked by Hamilton. Now we'll see if that was just an asterisk of a team that's won for fun almost for 3 years, and maybe it was just like a sloppy affair for them, right? I kind of saw that game coming for Winnipeg. Not that they would get blown out that bad, and by Hamilton. So let me be abundantly clear. I thought maybe they were due, for a loss, but it's the CFL, man, and really, I've seen lots of years where the team that's hot in the final month of the season is the team that goes all the way to the Grey Cup. So if BC can gain some confidence, and Vernon Adams, I don't think is going to play at the level of Rourke, because he was just all world, man. But can he just be competent? I think he can. And what he did was he really kind of helped cover up. I don't think BC's O-line is great. And so you need a guy with some scrambling ability like that. So I think he gives them a chance to be competitive, no question.
It's just hard. I love Vernon. I mean, he lives 20 minutes from us here in Seattle, is from here. And it's I feel like watching him, watching Carson Wentz now with the Commanders, where he just tries to do so much, right? Vernon, I just saw a lot of okay, you just see on his face, I would have taken that throw back. I shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have held on the ball too long. I hope he learns, but it's really hard to hop into a new system here and learn kind of 2/3 of the way through the season.
Well, yeah, and you consider Vernon Adams has made what? In his career, I know he's been around a long time, right? Since I think it was 2016. We're gonna have to look that up, Reed, but I think it was 2016. But I think he's only made 500 pass completions in his life in the CFL, right? He's had some injuries and such. So when I look at Vernon, you think about that that's basically one season. Right, if you put it all together, yeah, he's been around, but he's only had 500 pass attempts in his career. Maybe he's above that now, but I know he was hovering around that. So I still think there's time for him to show. And 500 pass attempts isn't a lot to find some consistency in your game. So he's still going to have a few throws that, kind of make you go, but that, it's a much better option than what they had. Like there was such a massive drop off from Rourke to the backups in BC. At least with Vernon Adams, I think it closes that gap.
Yeah, 69 games, 2016. So throw for 799 yards. So yeah, I mean it's
he's completed 500 passes. He's attempted more. Okay, my bad.
Yeah, but they were saying, but I mean, even the announcers on, they're like, it's not like he's been, like you said, he's been around a long time, but it's not like he's this grizzled veteran, like you said, that he's bringing in.
No, not at all. So, it gives BC a chance, man. It makes they just beat Calgary. That was a huge game for them, so it makes the race entertaining.
In terms of this brawl, and like I saw, it was when they were even coming off the field. You saw when it was the field goal kick, and I was recording video, like yelling on Twitter about us winning, and you could see in the background all this scuffle was going on. As we record Tuesday, Ambrosi hasn't come out. I think Neil McAvoy said they're still waiting to hear from the league what they want to do. But thoughts on that and the brawl and everything else? It's the Future Read update here. Literally 2 minutes after Jason Gregor and I got off of our recording, the CFL emailed out that they have suspended Cameron Judge for 1 game. Calgary linebacker disciplined for post-game altercation. The Canadian Football League has imposed a 1-game suspension on Calgary Stampeders linebacker Cameron Judge. The disciplinary measure is a result of Judge violating the league's player code of conduct by punching BC Lions receiver Lucky Whitehead on the field following the team's Week 15 contest. Have not seen any other disciplinary actions come down for Lucky Whitehead, anyone else involved, but wouldn't you know, timing-wise, but that is your up-to-date update. So thank you all so much.
Well, kind of seems pretty easy. I'm curious, maybe they're waiting to see if there's footage of the outside the stadium brawl, that all the talk that went on. Now, if it was here's the thing, though. The word brawl gets thrown out a little too easy, especially in baseball. Let's just be honest here. How many times there's a brawl, and they come out of their dugouts and 2 guys are pushing each other. That's not a brawl. But I'd heard the word brawl being used outside the stadium. I haven't seen any footage of it. Haven't heard anything. So was it just a lot of bravado and pushing and swearing and stuff? Either way, that's not great, of course. So I would hope, like you look in the NFL, Mike Evans, NFL comes down really quickly. Like we saw what happened on the field. That part we know. So yeah, I'm kind of surprised that when we're recording this on Tuesday that nothing's come down just yet, right? Like you want this decision made as early as possible. So you know what? If there is suspensions, the teams can adjust accordingly. You don't want guys taking all the number 1 reps all week and then find out on Friday, oh, you're not playing.
It's just hard, and I think that I've seen like in Danny Austin of the world, like, oh, there's no way this is so egregious, and the BC writers, like, it feels like the reporting is very colored by which team, kind of whoever is covering that, of who is like actually at fault here. I can't really get a clear picture.
Yeah, both sides are at fault right now. Who knows what was said? Like that's always the hardest one. Like were this the slurs and stuff, was it said? I don't know. People more in tune than me are going to know whether or not that's true. I'm sure that's what they're looking at. But, at bare minimum, now maybe they don't want to rush. Hey, we're going to make a decision. Well, what are you waiting for? Either you have the footage from outside the stadium or you don't. It's pretty simple, right? So get the footage. You should have been able to get the footage the next day. Like we're living in 2022, man. Reed, it's not like we got to get dial-up internet here and try to send the stuff over to Ambrosi. Like what the hell's going on? Let's just make a decision and move on.
In terms of other teams in the West, right? Obviously, Elks coming off the unexpected victory, right?
Yeah, that's the win of the year for them. Are you kidding me?
What do you make of the Elks? And I want to get your thoughts on the Rough Riders.
Well, I thought the Elks at the start of the year, I thought they could win 6 games. So they got a chance to do that. It is hard to turn things around quick. Chris Jones didn't do it in Saskatchewan. Very few guys do it. The Elks didn't have a very good team, right? It wasn't like his predecessor GM left them with the cupboards over full. They were bare, right? They were bare. That was not a good tenure. For the Elks. So you can't just fix that and just be like, oh, let's bring it. Because you see it, Chris Jones, 2 reasons why they've played it seems like 190 players already. And I know that's hyperbole, but you know what I mean. Injuries played a factor. Getting Morgan back in the middle of their defense is huge for them, right? There's no question. about that. The Ellis trade, obviously, he's added. Like, they got a lot now. Saskatchewan's O-line's a disaster, Reed. Like, if you and I lined up, we might be able to get to the quarterback. I'm not saying we'd sack him, but we might be able to get to the quarterback the way they're blocking right now in Saskatchewan. So, the Elks, to get all that pressure with the 3-man front, good for them. But, geez, if I'm Regina and I'm Saskatchewan, I'm like, what the hell is happening to us? But, the Elks, even without their best receiver, they've got some playmakers. Brown at least gives them a pulse out of the running back. He's pretty dangerous. But they got to figure out their special teams. How do you get a punt blocked every game? Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's ridiculous. So they still got some warts. And I had Coach Jones on my show, and he says it's inexplicable to me how we can win out. We'd be that much better of a team on the road. Like, even their preseason win was on the road. They're 4-4 on the road. Right. And usually you shouldn't be, you're going to struggle on the road, and they haven't won at home in 3 years. And now we're getting into October again. And that was the last time they won in 2019. And I know there was a year with no football, but still, they got the Montreal Alouettes. I'm going to say this, Reed, from an organizational standpoint, that's the biggest game they've had in a long time. You can't, because winning on the road is great, but your fans aren't paying to be there for that, right? They're watching, they're loyal. They might go out to the bar and have a beer, sure. But when you track a 3-hour window in your cable package for a month, what does that equate to? Like $1.50, right? So there's no vested like time and effort to watch your team win on the road. They go to the games all the time. They're actually tailgating outside Commonwealth now. It's, that part's good. The crowds are smaller, but those who are there are having fun. But they need a damn win. So I'll say that I think that is the biggest game for the organization. Like Victor Cui, tip, I wouldn't say, hey, we're going 4-0 again. That's a rookie present. Don't do that. But they get that win, it'll be a massive aid to their ticket sales, because people don't want to go to the games if they're always losing.
Speaking of Alouettes, right? So they're coming up. So week after next, right, against the Elks. Yeah. So this week, Hamilton playing Montreal. I've seen a lot of chirping online. Gary Stern right now yelling at caretaker Bob, kind of doing all that stuff. What do you make of the Gary Stern of it all, and the Alouettes and all the craziness right now?
Well, it's kind of funny when you watch your grandfathers yelling at each other, right? Like, what are we? Is this the old Angelo Mosca? Remember, as a BC Line guy now, I'm sure you remember that classic Grey Cup clip, right? With the cane, and they're fighting and bringing back their memory. And I was like, it was funny, but it was almost like, dude, like, you're my grandpa. You're not supposed to be doing that. So, I don't know. Like, it's good for the league, I guess, in essence. I don't know if it's really doing much. You'd probably have to ask the people in Montreal. I think they like that Gary comes across as maybe, he's like a fan, right? So yeah, he spouts off on Twitter, which I guess means he's a real fan. But, this is fun. Sure. I'm not a fun sponge. I have no problem with it. But, Hamilton finally showed up for the first time maybe all year, because a lot of people had Hamilton as winning the East at the start of the season. Up until last week's win against Winnipeg, they were easily the biggest disappointment in the league. To me, it's not even a question, right? Like, no one thought Ottawa would be that good, right? Even if you say they've underperformed, not close to the level of Hamilton. So now I'm kind of curious, right? Like, you've got a race in the least, I like to call it, as far as the playoff spot goes, because Hamilton is they're one win back of Montreal now, right? Now Montreal has a game in hand, but yeah, if Hamilton wins that game, they're tied with wins down the stretch. So yeah, it's a huge game. And you know what? If Bob and Gary want to go after it, great.
It certainly is more a compelling game now than it was a week ago with Hamilton. Oh yes, right?
100%. Yeah, and you know what? Hey, now some don't like it, and trust me, I've been a proponent of we should have one division of 6 in the CFL. I think that's way better, right? But even if you had one division of 6, there would still be playoff races. That's what people forget. Right? Like, you'd still have Hamilton and Montreal battling for the 6th spot. And Saskatchewan isn't out of the woodwork by any stretch of the imagination. They can't block to save their life, right? What are they, 2-7 in their last 9 games? Like, they're going the wrong way. So even if you had a division of 6, we'd still have a playoff race. It'd be no different. You just wouldn't have potentially, the team with the 5th best record getting home field advantage in the first round.
I saw standings come out this week. Like, Argonauts have like a 60% chance making the Grey Cup, even higher than Winnipeg. I mean, what do you make of the Argos in the East and kind of that? I mean, they keep winning. I mean, it kind of seems, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like anyone's that high on Toronto.
Well, no, but it just shows you. Now, that's all a statistical projection, but it's accurate in the sense that the best team in the league still has a harder path to get to the Grey Cup because of the current playoff format. And you shouldn't have that, right? Like, and this is not a one-off. This has happened year after year after year. And so if you change it to make it the top 6, and don't give me they're waiting for a 10th organization. Guess what? They were talking about the 10th organization when I had hair, Reed, right? And that's a long time ago. So trust me, I don't have any hair. I look great without hair, but the league doesn't look good without a 10th team when it's being talked about for over a decade. So I don't want to wait for that anymore. A one-team 9, you know what? It would force those other teams to improve. Simple. And I think that would be better.
Yeah, I always hear this crossover and the West and the crossover, but it's near impossible to kind of be able to. It just makes it so much harder to go that route, right?
Well, you got to win 2 road games in a row. That's a fact, right? And if it's BC, for instance, you're going 3 time zones, right? Like it's still an advantage to have home field advantage in the playoffs. Like that's just a fact. Like people are, well, if it was so easy, like that's such a hollow argument to you. Well, no one's ever done it. So you're saying because the 4th best team in the West can't make it to the Grey Cup that the format's good? Think about it. It's the 4th best. We're not asking, like, would the 3rd or the 2nd do it? It's the 4th best team in that division. So I shouldn't expect them to go win 2 games on the road. But the fact that the 2nd place team, and in some cases even the 1st place team, have a losing record and they get home field advantage, like it's kind of a joke. So, and sadly, I don't think it's going to change, but the CFL will be better off to change it. It's a simple change. You can still have an inbound schedule. The NFL has an inbound schedule, right? No one expects you to have a perfectly balanced schedule. And I get it because of travel. So the West would play each other more. So that in itself could still be in a slight advantage for the Eastern teams.
Speaking of Grey Cup, Saskatchewan, we were talking about them earlier. I remember preseason, they're talking like Saskatchewan needs to like break the salary cap, whatever it is to make sure they get to the Grey Cup. And now it's like, we don't even know, what do you make in like the fact that everyone hates Cody, that we all boohoo and the world's against us?
Well, Rider fans are passionate, and sometimes passion can be misguided, right? This Cody Fajardo, I saw Coach Dickinson say, hey, you know what? Part of it's on the O-line, part of it's on the quarterback getting out of the pocket too quick. I'm like, well, yeah, of course he's got happy feet right now because on every play he could get his ass handed to him right now. So it's a combination, but like their blocking's terrible. So they got to get better. And until they do, I can't blame the quarterback because he's running for his life on every second snap and he's not completely accurate. Could he play better? Sure. But how much better can he play, right? Like Saskatchewan's got some issues there. It is disappointing in a year where they're hosting the Grey Cup, but anybody who follows the CFL, and Reed, you followed for a long time, getting in when you host is very rare, right? So the odds of it happening were pretty low to begin with. You're not going to break the salary cap. That's not going to benefit you at all. So it's been a disappointing season for Saskatchewan, but the season's not over yet. But they got to find like their way here because like, what if, Hamilton beats Montreal, right? Now they're close, right? That lowers the chance of a crossover, right? And even the Elks, crazy enough, aren't mathematically out of it. The way Saskatchewan's played, like, could Edmonton beat Montreal? Conceivably, right? Could they beat BC without Rourke? Conceivably. So, we'll see. Now, Edmonton to win 3 out of 4 home games after you've lost a CFL record. Well, they've tied the CFL record for 14 consecutive home losses. That might be asking a little bit too much, right? Like, I don't think anybody in Edmonton thinks the Elks could win 3 out of 4 home games, other than their pres, Victor Cui, who's Mr. Positive. So I get it.
I don't hear any other team as much as like they're so mean, and like especially the Cody, and like the sound bites he comes out. I mean, even last year, this isn't a new thing. I mean, he was pissy last year.
Yeah. Yeah, that probably doesn't help his cause, but at the same time, you know what? He's entitled to his opinion. I'm not Cody Fajardo. I'm not listening to it. I don't know if he's walking down the street in Regina. Is he getting catcalled? I don't know. If he is, probably might want to rethink your life. Like, you can dislike a player but dislike him for what he is on the field. If he's walking down the street with his wife and kids, you might want to zip it. right? Like, what are you doing that's so great in your life? I've never really understood that one. But hey, Rider fans are hugely passionate. They show up, they support their team. They got a right to be upset, right? But I'll say this to them. Okay, so get rid of Cody Fajardo. Who are you bringing in that's better?
I know. I mean, it was just a bad week. He had this baby, baby Luca, right? It comes out and then just, I don't know. I felt it was the highs and lows of the world for Cody Fajardo last week.
Yeah, like sometimes, like Cody, you're probably not going to get the fans more on your side taking that approach. It's always better to say, you know what, I got to play better, right? You know what, now I got a new baby here. Hey, maybe that'll be the change. I got to play better. It's okay to say we got to block better, right? I got to stay in the pocket. I got to throw better. There's lots of things, but it never ends well when you want to go after your own fan base. It just never does.
Well, there was a soundbite. I think it was Justin Fields following the Green Bay, their loss on Sunday, where he was like, "Well, I guarantee it's harder for the people in our locker room because the fans aren't doing anything." I was like, "Oh, that's a wonderful way to kind of ingratiate yourself." There.
Well, it's true though.
I know.
Yeah, but I sure sometimes some people don't like the truth, right? But he's right. Like he does say, "Hey, you guys think you're upset as fans? Yeah, I get you're upset." But you don't think we're more upset? Like, I got to live with it's my job, right? Like, you go home, you have your kids, you have your job, you're doing whatever. I go home, I look in the mirror, and all I'm seeing is, why can't we win? So he's right, but yeah, you've got to get a little smarter in how you approach it for sure.
Yeah, it's just the way that. Before I let you go, any other kind of storylines, tracking, anything? I mean, Winnipeg, it's almost boring to talk about just how dominant, except for obviously the upset, but like anything else you're tracking here as we approach week 16? Are we at?
Well, I'm very curious to see, was this the stepping off point for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, right? As we talked about earlier in the show, like the Tiger Cats, the biggest disappointment. A lot of people still look at that lineup and say they should be better. So is this the bolt of confidence? And if it is, Reed, they would not be the first team that suddenly gets hot in September and rolls right through to November. Now I got to see more weeks before I believe it, of course. And then the rematch of Calgary and BC, like that was a really entertaining game this past week. Now they're at home at BC Place, and you know what? The Rourke injury I think took some of the air out of the excitement of Lions fans, but I think Lions fans are renewed a little bit excitement in that market. And your team, Reed. So, Vernon Adams, I think, gives them a little bit of hope. If all of a sudden they beat the Stamps again, that's 10 wins. Like they're 10-3. Like they're a legit contender for sure.
Well, if that feels as heated as any rivalry right now, especially following this brawl and everything else going on.
It's going to be awesome. And that's the other thing. They're facing off against each other. And I know we're recording this on Tuesday, but having heard nothing yet, is it just me or is that odd?
Well, but also, it's one thing to talk crap and whatever, sucker punch or whatever, but then knowing you got to have them come back into your building the next week. The timing of it is very interesting.
Yeah, and please, I don't want this. You should hype this game out. I don't want the league to come out. We're going to be watching you guys closely. Now, hey, I don't want anybody to go full circle here. I don't want any player to go Garrett Marino in that game by any stretch of the imagination. But a little bit of heightened animosity is never a bad thing to sell for a regular season game.
Yeah, it does seem like there's a way to lean into it. Like I said, it's not going Garrett Marino style, but of hey man, this is a really hot. Look at all the traction. Bucks and Saints hate each other. The NFL, and they know that, and they pitched that, and Brady screaming on the sidelines and throwing this stuff around, and that was wild.
Oh, you know what? They're actually, I'll say, hey, after what I thought was kind of a dreadful week 1 in the NFL, week 2 was really good. In the NFL, there's some unreal comebacks, great karma for the Browns, suck the Browns. Okay. And I think I can say that, what a joke. But anyway, hey, what about Tua and give the Dolphins a PR team on their social media. 2-0. I like that. I thought that was quite good, but 6 touchdown passes, Hill and Waddle, that's an exciting offense to watch. Now, I can't stand their owner, but it actually forced me to give up cheering for the Dolphins. So once they sell, then I'll probably cheer for them again. But that was an exciting game. What about the Raiders' epic collapse? There's lots of good storylines in the NFL.
Mike McDaniel had the best soundbite where he was like, after week 1, I thought, man, it'd be really cool to see us play under some adversity. And he's like, I think my players took me a little too literally there when we went down by whatever it was, 30 points. So it was good.
Yeah.
It was kind of...
Oh, it was great. It was like those are like some three monumental comebacks late in games or at the end of the third quarter and a halftime. It's crazy.
Before we go, I do hate now that the NFL season started, all the CFL Twitter of like, well, I thought the NFL, or like there's all this chirping back and forth. And I'm like, you can exist. I can watch CFL Saturday or whatever. Like, it's just killer to me.
I don't understand. To me, you've got to be insecure as a fan to have to mock the other fan, like the other league. Like if you're a diehard CFL fan, be proud of what you are. It shows it doesn't help your cause when you have to insult the other league to make your league look better. That doesn't work, right? Like the NFL can be good. They're going to have some crap games. They're going to have some great games. The CFL can be good. They're going to have some crap games, right? Like, Chad Ochocinco, hey, anybody with a pulse. That's why I always laughed at all these people who were like, oh, an NCAA team would beat the CFL. I'm like, I talked to every CFL player. Like, are you joking? They would absolutely murder them. It wouldn't even be close. Like, not even close. The best NCAA team would get their ass handed to them by a CFL team. That is a fact. Talk to anybody who played at a high-level NCAA program and then who played in the CFL. It's not even close. So number one. Number two, like, why not have more football excitement? Like, I love it right now. Like, I got highlights going all over the place. Like the storyline in Calgary, BC, the epic upset for Hamilton, the Elks Saskatchewan game was highly entertaining, right? Like the Elks are down 10-0. You're like, oh, they're going to get pounded. Then they score 17 straight, and then they're up. Geez, they might win. And then they give up 10 points in the final 5 minutes, and then they need a field goal. Like, that was great. Back and forth. The NFL had it. So to me, I'm like, you're a football fan, Reed. I respect it. That's what I like. Like I'm a fan of football. I like it. There's pros and cons of both leagues, but you don't have to badmouth the other one. It only makes your league. I don't think it helps your league as much as you think it does.
Jason, I appreciate your time today. Like I said, I'm all in now on hockey too. I mean, we had our first season last year with the Kraken. I watched all the playoffs and Edmonton's collapse and all that stuff. Very exciting. So I'm really excited for that as well. My wife hates it, but now we have sports all year round, so it's good.
Dude, you'll like Bjorkstrand, the newest member. He'll give you a legit score. Like Seattle, they're still not. I don't think will be a playoff team, but at least their top six has a little bit of pop. Right? It's kind of like in a football analogy. If you don't have a competitive O-line, you don't have much of a chance. If you at least don't have some guys who can score goals, you can't win in hockey. So they're not there yet. They don't have elite guys. They don't have an elite quarterback. They don't have an elite top six, but they've got like some serviceable top six guys.
Yeah, like if we get it down there, we can kind of get it in, but we don't have someone that's going to win in like a face-off. I feel like we need the.
Well, they don't have like a Matthews or a McDavid or a Draisaitl, McKinnon type of guy, right? Like you need the big. It's no different than in football, right? Like, yeah, outside of the Bucks and maybe Baltimore, with Trent Dilfer and those guys, like you rarely win without an elite quarterback in the NFL and even in the CFL, right? Like you need quality play from your quarterback to win.
Well, Jason Gregor, really appreciate your time, and we'll stay in touch. Thank you so much.
Reed, anytime, buddy.
Well, I believe this is our first ever repeat CFL guest on, which is exciting, from America's CFL team, the BC Lions. We have Andrew Peirson on, courtesy of Matt Baker and the team over there. I appreciate it. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me back on. Looking forward to the chat. I'm doing well. We just played Calgary. It was a dogfight. Went to the ending there again. So we played them again. Looking forward to another good game.
Well, and you had a stand-up performance in the game. We'll talk about that. That's part of the reason you're on. First off, the last time you were on, mid-March, I think we looked up March 15th, the world looked very different. We were previewing the season. We were talking like, is Nathan Rourke even going to be able to throw a football? Then, Nathan Rourke sets the world on fire, everything else. Obviously, we know everything now with, my boy VA coming on. The Lions are 9-3. What is life like for you? What's it been like the last 6 months kind of since we talked?
Well, I just want to point out, when we talked last too, I talked up Nate a little. I talked him up pretty big there. So his hard work, everything I said, definitely came through, and I was really happy for him. Unfortunately, like you mentioned, injuries in football do happen. He's around the facilities working hard, like he always does. So we're hoping for a speedy recovery, and it looks like he's recovering well. And my heart goes out to him and everything. So. But that being said, we're moving forward with like you said, VA. Vernon Adams, great guy. He had a great game last game. Got the ball out quick. Calgary throws a lot of stuff at us. It's a really, really good, well-coached defense with a lot of players, a lot of playmakers. So we had to be on our game, and I think VA did a stand-up job for his first official start with the whole week he was preparing as a starter. So we got comfortable with him. We obviously have stuff that we have to clean up on. Going into this game, we watched the film, and there's stuff that we want to clean up on. But overall, it's exciting. He's a playmaker. He gets the ball out quick, and he gets the ball to the playmakers around. We have got a lot of studs around us in the backfield with James Butler, and then in the receiving core with Lucky, Burnham, Hatch, Rhymes, Katoy. He's doing a great job so far, and our job's not done though. Like I mentioned earlier, it was a great game last game, but that's in the past, so we got to move forward.
And I'm thinking like storylines of the season, and obviously this crazy stuff's gone on in Montreal and BC and Ottawa and everything. But just emotionally, it has been a whirlwind for you guys and the team and the squad up there in BC, kind of over the season. I mean, just emotionally, kind of mental well-being. How's everything going? I mean, obviously Nate and everyone's happy, healthy, but just how are you holding up in the team?
Yeah, I mean, you try to tell yourself, as positional groups, you try to control what you can control. We try to do a good job of the next man up mentality, which is, what happened with me this last week with Sok Chung going down and me stepping up. So, we got to be ready, and that's football. Like you hate to say it, you don't want to be here saying that. You want everything to be perfect. You want everyone to be healthy and everything like that. It's a long season. There's lots of good guys lining up against you that, that everyone's trying to make a living. So stuff like this happens. And unfortunately, you need to prepare for the worst. And, a lot of guys get their shot. And so, emotionally, everything, you got to control, you control. You feel for the guys when they go down because you never like to see it. But we have a job to do. And that's the truth of the matter. And so we just got to keep plugging along and.
How is, when you guys do CFL all the time, the home and home, obviously you were in Calgary last week coming in.
Yep.
Do we like that? Does that make things more challenging? What do you make of that?
And the CFL season, I just got done saying control what you can control, but here you're going to comment on this, but we have a tough schedule with, the 3 buys being in the first half of the schedule here. So we have a bit of a grind here from the last buy, pretty much after Labor Day here in Canada until the end of the season. So, it's a long one. So you play these games like, back to back, and then in a tough West conference right now. So we're playing a lot of West teams, but that's what you want. It makes it interesting for the fans too, because all these teams are competing for a playoff spot. So, it is what it is. The good thing is we're at home the next 2 days in the next 2 games, so that's nice. We get to not travel as much, and it's a lot traveling around and staying in hotels and whatnot, and try to get back to kind of a routine here. So that's good. So we play back to back, and then we play Toronto after that. So go back east. So looking forward to the next the ending of the season here, and hopefully get a good spot in the playoffs.
Yeah, the bye weeks were crazy. I mean, you look at some of them, and like Winnipeg didn't have one that seemed like forever, and then BC had them all. And I mean, I get there's no probably real fair way to kind of work that out, but it is. You do wish that maybe I've been told the season starts after Labor Day, when we're playing straight through from Labor Day to November.
Yeah,
it's a little challenging.
Yeah, but it is what it is. You just got to. I'm not here to make schedules. I'm here to block the guy in front of me. So. And win football games. That's what I try to focus on.
So you had the opportunity, both of these Calgary games so far have been must watch, right? Obviously the big, the big comeback one, I can't remember whatever week that was. And then the overtime, this one, you had the big chance to step up right this week, play, like you were saying before, a little bit out of position. Talk me through that, and how was that for you?
Yeah. I mean, the last 2 years, in 2021 and then this year, I've been in a position of like a 6-man kind of backup position where, I always had to prepare in case someone goes down to jump in there. And that didn't change going to this year. Our offensive line has been doing a fantastic job up front. The front five there. So when Sook went down against Montreal, he finished the game because he's a fighter. So he finished the game up there, but after the game there's something wrong there, so he had to take the week off, and it was my time to step up. And I was preparing to start for the last 2 weeks. So going into this game, it was just my opportunity to finally step up and show what I've been working for and working at, back in 2018 when I jumped in as a rookie center to make, kind of a similar spot or timing where we were trying to make a playoff push, and, we end up, making the playoffs, and it didn't work out in our favor in the playoffs in 2018. It's a similar position. So I've been here, I've done this. And the good thing is that we had a great game plan. Coach Jordan Masimic here had a great game plan going in, and the guys executed. I was just one of them out there, so happy to get my opportunity and happy that I executed on it.
Yeah, had a big, blocking opportunity, the extra point, overtime. I'm trying to remember. I think one of the first overtimes this season, I can't remember, at least that I've kind of watched live. It was the one Saturday I've had off with weddings since, I think, May. So I was actually able to sit.
There's probably a couple people that are in your position. Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of my buddies are feeling the same thing.
Well, I was thrilled. I was able to sit and watch it. I mean, obviously coming down to overtime and all of that, but it felt good. I mean, obviously you guys, trying to figure it out with Nathan, and then you got Michael Connor in there, and then you got Pipkin, and then now with Vernon. Now that presumably, right, we have a game plan going forward. I mean, how does that feel for you all and the team in the locker room in that way?
Yeah, I mean, like I alluded to earlier, it is next man up, but you do at the quarterback position, you do like, having a guy that you can look for, like, kind of continuity in the sense that, like, snap count, cadence, little things like that, like where is he going to be in the pocket? Does he, where's his drops? Little things like that. The offensive linemen kind of carry about, but the people that are watching probably don't think too much about. But little things like that, do go a long way. So having some continuity going forward, and those reps, just the same people in there, or the same person, should I say, in the backfield, it does help. So. It's exciting, and like I alluded to earlier, and he's a playmaker too. So it's good football watching him, sling the rock, and then also, once in a while, kind of do a flip or two. I kind of told him after the game too. I was like, hey, how about we simmer down on the hurdles and that stuff? But hey, he's a playmaker, and he's going out there to try to get that first down and win us the game. So you can't knock the guy for trying to get that first down and whatnot. So.
No, I know Vernon. My heart skipped a beat when I saw him go up over end, and I said, "Oh, yeah." It was kind of like, I think it was like Any Given Sunday, and where the guy, he gets hit and does the flip into the end zone.
Right. And then they put in slow motion to our social media team, who does an awesome job here. I saw the video after too. So I showed VA because he's not really active on socials during the season. And I showed him. I was like, "This was what it looked like from that angle." Because when you're playing, there's 100 things going on. You're not really get the opportunity to sit back and have some popcorn and watch someone do a flip or nothing. So, but yeah, no, he's all right. So thank God.
So the big block, Butler, kind of the overtime, touchdown, all that. Like you said, you stepping up, having to fill in like that. When you come in after the game, like what is the reaction like for you? And do you get from the coaches and everybody else?
I mean, first and foremost, we got the job done. I've been doing this for a while, so that like. After the game, you don't want to get too high on like your performance, because you're going to turn the flip the film on, and then that didn't look like it did in the game. I maybe should have done this and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you got the job done. So that's first and foremost. Did we get the win? Then we can go back and say, okay, what can we tune up? And obviously my performance wasn't perfect. I missed on a stunt with Rose and Lemon there in the middle that I immediately was really angry about. But other than that, I thought I played really well. So little things here and there that we can tune up as a group that, we left some points out there. But overall, like I mentioned earlier, it's a good group up there in Calgary, with well coached, good playmakers. So getting a win in McMahon, never easy to do. So right after the game, happy, got the win. Overtime, we had like 70 plays, so I was pretty gassed there for a couple short yardages, running the rock a lot, which helps us out too because we get to go forward a little bit more. So, but overall, happy. Happy I got my shot. Happy that I picked up some blitzes that weren't easy. Stunts going against Justin Rose, never easy. So I was happy. I was ecstatic, and the film didn't look as bad as I thought it might have been. So.
So obviously, this week, standings wise, huge, right? I think BC wins, they clinch. Obviously, we've won the series against Calgary, but division rival, and you want to have the victory on that. Also, absolutely. Just heated in general. We'll just leave it at that, right? Probably a little bit more of a heated matchup here coming into the week following the game last week. Like, what are you guys? What's the words from you guys? You were at practice today. Preparing. What's going through? Because obviously it's going to be hot.
Yeah, I mean, I think to the outside world, it's a little hotter than in here. I will say, football is an emotional sport. You're right in the face with people, so stuff happens. So, we're not going to change much. We have to clean up, like I mentioned, we have to clean up some little things here and there that could be, we have the right play calls for certain things that if we called something else, we have to be prepared for certain situations. And, we just need to execute at the same level that we did the last two games, because that was enough to win. So, that being said, we know that they're going to throw some different stuff at us on offense. And with the incident too, Judge going down, so who knows what's going to happen. And right now we're just kind of trying to, clean up the stuff that we didn't do well, keep doing the stuff that we did do well, and then prepare for stuff that they might throw at us. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of the name of the game when you play someone back to back.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me. Like as the season's gone on, and the standings getting solidified now. We cover USFL and obviously XFL coming back, and XFL, trying to always tell people about the CFL. I'm like, just how big some of these divisional matchups are. Like this is. It's just coming down the line, and with Vernon, just the storylines, especially this season, have been really exciting to cover, right from just the outside, kind of eagle eye looking
absolutely.
Over.
That's what you want.
And you guys being in the trenches, so I don't know, just tremendously exciting, and I'm just glad that I can follow BC in that way. Anything else before I let you go? I mean, I know it's a big week and lots of prep, and like you said, not a lot of rest coming off the away game last week.
No, I mean, I think I think that's it. It's just preparing. Hopefully it's good football. We always appreciate all the Lions organization, all that you do for us, and our fans supporting us this year. It's been unbelievable. We're looking forward to playing back home. So we're going to get BC Place bumping there, and yeah, looking forward to it.
It's going to be exciting. Track it. I want to get, if we have any of these, divisional games ever, I want to be able to travel up there. So we got to make sure we make it. And I want to be able to travel up, do some live shows there. Andrew, really appreciate your time today, especially on the short week and coming back and Calgary coming in. So thank you so much for your time.
Always a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure.
Well, I'm thrilled today. Off the bye, we have another of our. We get a lot of illustrious guests from the Montreal Alouettes during this. We have Mike Moore here. How are you doing, sir?
Doing pretty well, man. Glad to be here.
Good. So, coming off the bye here, big game, Ottawa. How is the 2022 CFL season going for you thus far?
It's going pretty well. You mean lots of ups and downs, but that's just football, and I'm glad just to be playing.
Feeling getting some momentum here as we approach the later half of the season. How are you guys feeling in the locker room?
Yeah, man. In the locker room, we're very close in the locker room. Everybody's really cool with each other. I really enjoy being in this locker room, man. Everybody's always checking up on each other. This is one of the good locker rooms that I've been a part of.
You've spent a lot of time in the CFL, bounced around to a bunch of different teams. What do you make of the CFL lifestyle and the community and the game? What do you like about playing up in Canada?
Just playing up in Canada. It's just something different, man. I've been here for, been here for probably about 6 years now. But definitely an experience. Got to enjoy a lot of things out here. Had my kids out here who are officially Canadian too. So, yeah, I like being out here. It's definitely a different experience, and it's just something I enjoy.
How many kids you guys have?
I had 3 boys.
Oh, congratulations. How old are they?
I have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a newborn.
Who was it? I can't remember who it was. If it was Darren Bombing or Jim Mullen, someone was on our show and they were talking that's the long-term play of the CFL. Is we attract all these players up to Canada and then get them, and then we have more Canadians that way.
That's how it works.
Did you meet your partner up in Canada?
So no, met my wife actually in college. Met her in college, and we been together since then.
Does she like the Canadian lifestyle?
She definitely doesn't like the moving around, but I mean, she definitely likes once we find like a good place, she definitely enjoys wherever we're at. So she enjoys that part, but the moving around is definitely not fun though.
What do you like about Montreal?
Just being in the city, man. It's really cool just being out here in the city, being able just to get to anywhere you want, like in a quick beat. Hopping on the train, going downtown, going to get some food with the guys, maybe. Always a festival going on or something like that. So it's definitely a great place to be.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I don't think all CFL cities or areas are necessarily created equal. Coming from Edmonton and, it's a little bit colder up there, right? A little more rural. Wow, what'd you say?
I said, it's definitely cold, man. That's probably one of the coldest places in the world.
You guys have a big game against Edmonton, I think, week after next. Thoughts about returning and facing your old squad?
Yeah, man. I mean, I never hold any grudges against any team for anything that's ever happened to me. So I'm not that type of guy. But I mean, it's definitely cool just to go against those guys. Because, I'm used to going against those guys in practice every day. So it's cool just to actually get to play going verse.
Alouettes, you're second in the East. What are you making of, BC is my team. That's kind of our champion of the podcast, but Montreal is my team of the East. What do you make of the East standings and how you guys are facing right now?
Man, everything, you just got to take one game at a time. We always talk about that in the locker room. We always talk about that in our team meetings. We can't look ahead. We can't look too far down the season thinking about what we got to win and how we work this out to get into the playoffs here or there. But you just got to take each game and just like we're trying to this is the next game to get to the playoffs. So just take this next game and go all out and win this game.
Feeling like a little more settled now during the season, right? Obviously, coaching changes, everything else happening. Do you guys feel like we're at a good spot now?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's good. We got a little groove now, got a little momentum now with each other. We've been with each other for a little while now, so it's definitely a lot more comfortable in the around now with each other. So I think we definitely got a little groove going.
What do you had your bye week last week? You said you went home a little bit. What do you do when you're not, going crazy on the football field?
Well, my oldest son, he just started playing football himself. So when I went home, that was pretty much, I was on daddy duties with that, just taking him to football practice. I was the dad out there just watching, had my little chair, just watching him play football. It's one of the most funnest things, man.
So is he playing, then is it Canadian rules?
Oh, no, so he's back. So right now.
He's back in. Okay.
So yeah, he's in Maryland right now, and he's playing full shoulder pads, helmet, full tackle football right now.
That's good. You got to teach him a little bit of the 3 downs. Make sure that he knows kind of both sides of the field. And then you said bringing your family up. I mean, do they like coming up and seeing you in Canada?
Oh yeah, they definitely love coming visit out here when we especially out here in Montreal. There's so much to do. Take my kids over to Six Flags. Take my kids downtown. Just let them all enjoy that. Take my wife out to eat out here. It's definitely this is a lot of enjoyable things to do.
Something people don't know about you. What do we got?
Well, probably like my close friends know, but like most people don't know about me. Like I'm a huge anime guy. I love anime. I'm always, if I'm not watching football or watching like a movie or something, I'm probably watching like an anime show.
What kind of anime do you like?
I mean, Dragon Ball Z is always the GOAT, but I mean, you can got some Naruto, some One Punch Man, some One Piece. I can keep going, man. I got a lot.
That's good, man. It's good to fill in a little bit of the character, because I mean, it's I just think especially with the CFL and fans love to get to know you guys, right? It's such a more of a community experience. That way. Do you enjoy that aspect of the CFL and feeling like you have that fan interaction?
Yeah, man, I definitely enjoyed it. That was one thing I was saying. What didn't feel that like I didn't really get to feel that last year, with a lot of the COVID restrictions. So I mean, now get to do that now is like very enjoyable, even more because you haven't got to do it so long.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you taking time, coming off the bye here, rapid fire questions. Good luck, like I said, against Ottawa. Any thoughts headed into the matchup before I let you go?
Nah, man, like I said before, we're just taking this one game at a time, and this is the next game up, and whatever next we got, we're going to try to go all out, try to get the W.
It's going to be Mike Moore here, defensive lineman, Montreal Alouettes. Really appreciate it. Like I said, anytime the team and getting people on to talk CFL, but especially from the Alouettes franchise. We have lots of friendly faces over there, so I certainly appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thank you for the interview.
Special thanks to all of our guests today. Andrew Murray taking well over an hour out of his time in the midst of his work schedule. The professor, as I think I'm going to call him now. Hopefully we can get that to stick. Jason Gregor coming on, Andrew Peirson, and Mike Moore. Really appreciate that. Anytime we get CFL guys, come in, Andrew's like walking off of practice. Okay, got to hop on the Zoom call. I really appreciate that. Matt, everyone, Francis, the guys at the teams over there for setting all that stuff up. I really appreciate that. Doesn't go unnoticed. And then obviously Jason Gregor coming on, sharing some of his valuable time talking. But that Jason was good. I thought really bombastic performance from Jason this week. I really appreciate that. I think Jason feels like he can let a little loose when it comes to the CFL stuff a little bit here on the podcast. So I appreciate that. Like I said, we know what's coming up next week. We already know that is coming up. Should be exciting. Good to get some other good guests. Got to send some more emails, but I'm hoping that the same when we had the XFL City reveal, whatever you want to call it, here back in July. Let's open the floodgates here a little bit more. Get some more media people talking about this, right? We get some more guests on that way. So I am looking forward to seeing, what new voices we can bring on, as well as obviously a lot of our favorites to kind of talk about this stuff moving forward. Really appreciate everyone's time. Like and subscribe. Thank you guys all so much. And we'll see you next week, at least once, but hopefully, like I said, the normal podcast Friday, but then maybe we can do something on Wednesday with the team names as well. Thank you guys so much. Take care.